first pick.
Welcome to On the Clock. On the Clock's presented by our friends at Titan Bat Company. If you're looking for the highest quality handcrafted wood bats in the game, Titan Bats has you covered with premium maple, ash, and birch game bats in 10 different models and colors to fit your swing and style. As you're gearing up for the spring season, Titan Bats is the perfect option for your next wood bat. In addition to game bats ranging from youth baseball to softball to men's baseball, Titan Bats also offers award bats that make the perfect gift to celebrate a teammate, coach, or baseball fan in your life. Check them out at titanbats.com and use the code JB15 for 15% off your order. All right, it's Thursday, May 1st. We're running a little bit behind this week. We had an interview drop with Alabama's Riley Quick on Tuesday, kind of in replace of what our normal schedule is like. We got some big college baseball news to get to. I think the first thing we probably want to hit on is Chris Lemonis was fired as a head coach of Mississippi State. Over the weekend, Justin Parker was named the interim head coach. We can go through some possible replacements. Jason, what are some of your thoughts on this firing?
I mean, first off, you're sad for Lemonis.
Yeah.
Like this is someone's job. This is someone's career. Like he's done a lot of good things at Mississippi State, but then you have to step back and look at it objectively and say, okay, they haven't been good the last year. I mean, they were pretty good last year. They came on strong, but it's one of the things where you look at their roster and you look at their just like metrics up and down and you say, this team should be better. They should be better. And so it's a business. And not only is it a business, I don't think there's a school more in the country that it's more of a business than Mississippi State. Their facilities are phenomenal. Their fans are phenomenal. So it unfortunately makes sense. But, you know, it's one of the things where you feel bad for the guy. I think one of the things a lot of people were kind of going back and forth on was the timing. I really think that this timing is actually going to start to be more the status quo, primarily because of a few things. One is the roster management mayhem from effectively late May to late June, early July is insane. You're trying to understand what high school guys are keeping. You're trying to understand like what guys who are, you know, MLB eligible are going to be going in the draft. Like, do we have enough NIL to bring them back? Then you have the portal. How do we keep the portal players? And we have agents calling me left and right. If you have a lame duck coach at that period, you are way behind. So I really feel like this is one of the things that's going to start to happen more frequently. It'll just be interesting to see what they do in terms of waiting, or do they jump? Do they have someone in place? And I know you guys want to talk about go over the replacements, but those are the kind of things running through my head.
Yeah, no, and I think you're kind of spot on too. It's just everything's changed with NIL and the transfer portal and things like that, and coaches have to make decisions quicker, and you want to get a guy in place as soon as possible. It's just tough because Mississippi State's 26-19 now on the season. They're 7-14 in SEC play. You just kind of saw the writing on the wall coming. We interviewed Lemonis early in the season. I think the tough part too is like they had a top 5, or what was like considered a top 5 recruiting class going into next year. Tyler, we talked a little bit about that when we interviewed Lemonis in this offseason, kind of having the Parker brothers and then a couple of other things. But what do you think happens to that recruiting class now at Mississippi State?
I feel like now with Lemonis leaving, maybe you start seeing some of these high schoolers are more open to going pro quicker. And I think that really kind of comes down to who Mississippi State replaces him with. Kind of thinking about what Texas A&M did last year, where they got early back and it helped them retain, you know, Jace Laviolette, Gavin Grahove from following to Texas or maybe going somewhere else. So it's going to be really paramount on who the hire is. But, you know, at this point, I do think that there is a legitimate chance that, you know, not only are both the Parker brothers potentially gone in the draft. You look at Landon Harmon, who's one of the top right-handed prep arms in this class, might be gone as well. Trent Greenlinger from Huntington Beach could also take this opportunity and say, hey, I want to try going pro. And since, you know, the guy that got me to campus or, you know, recruited me to come here is no longer here. But I mean, that's also just all hypotheticals at this point. Yeah. I think at this point, we kind of just wait to see what the hiring is and what you guys mentioned with this kind of becoming the status quo now, I'm 100% on board with that happening, because you really got to time everything perfectly, especially with what you guys mentioned, the NIL and the portal kind of dominating the scene now. You need to get ahead of the game before anybody else does to try and secure the guys that you want to have for next year. And looking at what they have to retain next year too, like Ace Reese looks like a guy that could be really talented next year. He's one guy to kind of look for that, we'll see what his future looks like, but it's really just we'll watch from the outside and see what happens from there.
Yeah. And speaking of kind of how they're going to have to go through the hiring process for you guys, do you think that they go with like a marquee name head coach? Do you think they go for like one of the top major head coaches, or do they find one of the top assistants kind of in college baseball? Jason, what do you think?
Yeah, so this is kind of the difficulty. Like, if you're trying to wait for a big name, it's going to be a while. I mean, look at Texas. They didn't have anyone until late June because they had to be done with the World Series.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's like, okay, well, at that point, the portal's been open for weeks, literally weeks. Like, is your team gutted? Like, what's going to happen at that point? And so, you're not sure really what to do. So I don't know if they do that. There's always like 3 to 4, quote unquote mid-major names that generally get thrown in, like Ostrander at Southern Miss, Godwin at ECU. I feel like a lot of times those names get thrown out there.
Yeah.
I feel like Godwin in particular, he's been there so long. That one doesn't really make a lot of sense. I feel like he's an ECU guy kind of through and through. If I was Mississippi State, and maybe this is a hot take, I would lean towards those younger assistants. I mean, clearly it's hard to point at the outliers and say, hey, this is the norm, go for the norm. But look at Georgia, Wes Johnson came out of nowhere. He went to the pros for a bit. He was a pitching coach for the Twins. Then he went to LSU. Now he went to Georgia. Year one, phenomenal.
Yeah.
Vitello was an assistant coach at Arkansas, went to TCU, dominated, got them very, very quickly. Not immediate. It wasn't the Wes Johnson immediate, but it was pretty quick. And so then the thought process is like, okay, well, if there's some big, assistants, who would that be? And in my opinion, there are a couple that I would look for. Nolan Cain, I would say Matt Hobbs. Those are the two that kind of ring out for me. I think I've always thought that Matt Hobbs was the coach in waiting for Arkansas. That's just kind of how it's always felt. But like, when does DVH retire? Like, at what point is that actually going to happen? And if there's a job like Mississippi State, which is there and is active, do you take it? And then the thought is, well, is Hobbs that much better than Parker? Like, do we look at Parker? Like, I think there's a lot of back and forth. But I think Mississippi State has enough pieces. They have the facilities, they have the fans, that if they got an assistant coach that's a good recruiter, and that's why honestly I would love someone like Nolan Cain. I think they could kill it. But that's just my opinion. And not only that, you could hit the ground running pretty quickly. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't Wes Johnson named the Georgia head coach while he was still at LSU?
Yes,
and he
I believe
kept
so.
coaching LSU. So I mean, it's one of the things where you can basically name your guy and kind of get going. Now, it would be weird because, again, like, they could theoretically play each other, and it's like, what happens with that? But again, I if it were me, I'd go that route, because I wouldn't want to wait till mid-June, late June, and be like, boy howdy, I hope O'Connor, like, for some reason decides to come here from Virginia. I don't see that happening. It's a phenomenal job, but baseball coaches are just different. Like, they want, everyone wants a job that pays more, very clearly. But I don't think you're going to pull a guy like Godwin, who's been at ECU for decades, because that's just like, it's like his family. And so I just don't see that. But that's me personally.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I've seen Rob Vaughn's name at Alabama thrown around a bit. I'm like, he's making close to $1 million, and they'd have to pay a $2.25 million buyout just to get him to come to Mississippi State, which I'm sure they'd be willing to do to get someone like Rob Vaughn. But I mean, I have to imagine he's got to pretty cushy job in the SEC. Like, sure, Alabama probably doesn't resource the same to baseball as like Mississippi State would, but it's going to be hard. Like, that team's going to be in the playoffs, like you mentioned. They're going to probably make a deeper run in the playoffs as well. And even those mid majors like Troy and Southern Miss, like, they're playoff bound. They're playoff bound teams. So if you're going to try to take those head coaches, it's like, all right, well, you're going to have to wait forever. Yeah. Tyler, what do you think? What are some of your thoughts on this?
Yeah, no, I'm 100% on board with what you guys are saying, where it's like it's going to be tougher with these mid-major coaches. Like you look at Cliff Godwin, for example, like you brought him up. Born and raised in Snow Hill, which is not too far from Greenville.
Yeah.
Played at ECU for 3 years under Keith LeClaire back in, I think it was like 98 to 2001. He had a high school assistant position at Kinston High School, which is also not far from Greenville, and has been there for a decade. So at this point, it looks like he's just put his foot in the ground and is not going to be leaving anytime soon. This is not the first time he's been linked to a higher position.
It's like every year. It feels like every year. It's like, oh, here's an opening on Godwin. It feels like that every year.
It does. And then, like, he did come from the SEC. He went to Omaha with LSU. He went to Omaha with Ole Miss as well. But I think he's heart set on making that Omaha appearance with ECU at this point. And even with this age NIL, like, they lost Zach Root this year. And, you know, looking at what they've had pitching wise, you would obviously would love to have Zach Root back if you're Cliff Godwin. But I just don't think when, like, we'll take college basketball coaches, for example, like, there's been some higher names, like the Miami coach, Virginia coaches, all kind of just quit on the spot this past year because of NIL. So I wonder if, you know, Godwin's not even interested in NIL personally. So it's a very interesting conversation to have with some of those coaches. And I just don't think Godwin's one of them personally.
Yeah. What are your
one name I do feel like maybe a little out of the woodworks also is Dan Fitzgerald from Kansas. I mean, I want to be cautious because I love my Jayhawks, but I think he'd be a phenomenal hire. You see where that program was 4 years ago to where it is now. Their attendance is like at an all-time. They're breaking records left and right. I saw another one that they did this weekend where it's their 4th Big 12 sweep, which is a record for them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, everything has been like this trajectory up. But I'm trying to think of what would appease the Mississippi State fans because I'm sure they're thinking Vitello. They're thinking we want, that
big name.
We want that pedestal. We want that trophy.
Yeah.
And I think baseball is one of those things where the trophy may just not look as pretty as it is. And I think if they stepped back and look at it, be like, this is going to be a phenomenal hire. And I think there are a few out there. I'll be really interested to see what they do because I just don't feel like waiting for too long. If you're going to wait that long, there was zero reason to fire now, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You could always have your AD in the background, having communications, having talks. I mean, Texas, they fired their coach pretty early, and they had those conversations, and they were moving around in the back end, and they waited a long time, and clearly it worked out. But I mean, in this musical chairs games of coaching, I don't think I want to wait until like the last few moments before the music turns off to try to find a coach, because you may end up going like, a little buyer's regret that you made that decision so late.
Yeah. The one name that kind of was coming to mind, do you think this is a possibility? Is like Nick Mingione from Kentucky. Like, he's got Mississippi State ties. He was the assistant coach there for years. But I mean,
I'm
he's
sure
got a good gig too.
I'll get hate from Mississippi State fans, but I just don't know if it's a substantial enough jump up from Kentucky. Clearly, it's a jump up. Clearly.
Yeah.
But is it enough to say I want to start over again? And for me, that would be hard because basically you'd be saying you were able to do it at Kentucky, but you weren't able to get was the threshold just resources? Like, because Kentucky's athletic department has a ton of resources, and I don't know, maybe a really good opportunity for him to use as like a leverage chip of like, hey, I'm being looked at. Give me a few more resources, more NIL, maybe like a practice facility, blah, blah, blah. And maybe that's a way to help them with that. But I don't know. I could go on and on about this, but I'm sure there's more for us to get to.
Yeah. We can Tyler, you got anything before we kind of switch over to top 25 discussions?
So I do have one more coach to kind of throw out there, and I may have misheard. I don't know if I'm stepping on any toes here, but Lane Burroughs from Louisiana Tech could also be another guy, because I think he's got ties to Mississippi State, and also just looking at the resume he's had since he got the Law Tech. They hosted in 2021. They've had 5 top 3 Conference USA finishes in the past 7-ish years, and they're on track for another. They're on the verge of 30 wins again, and I think they're like 11-6 or 11-5 in conference right now. I think that's another guy to really kind of keep your eyes on, because
I like that.
He knows how
they
to
ran
build
into a
squads.
buzzsaw in that 21 series by the Wolfpack. I think
Yes.
didn't you score like 30 runs in 2 games? Or like I think you guys scored double-digit runs every single game, and then you went. That was the crazy season where they should have won the national championship. Sorry, Tyler.
Don't remind me, please.
But that should help though for our transition. We can transition to NC State right here and start our top 25 discussion. Talk a little bit about NC State sweeping Clemson. Tyler, I'm just going to turn the floor over to you on this one.
I think the biggest way to kind of start this off is this is arguably the loudest statement that they could have made on their schedule this year. I don't think that's a hyperbole with saying that, because Clemson has, week in, week out, found ways to win series. They hadn't lost a series to this point in time, and it's always difficult to get a run off their bullpen, because when you get to Reed Garris, get to Lucas Malstat, it's game over. This State team has found the right buttons at the right time ever since that Virginia walk-off, and they won that series after scoring 7 unanswered. I think they've gone like 6-0 or 7-0 in ACC play since. It's really impressive what Avon's been able to do. And I had mentioned in the past, like this is usually a ball club that gets hot really late. And they have found it again. They really have. And I think the biggest part, when you look at the lineup, they made a switch from Luke Nixon being the leadoff guy to Tyler Head. And Ty Head has been a revelation for them this year. We've talked about the plays he's made at center field. Like, he's been one of the most special gloves in that position this year, but also he just fits the spark plug mold so well for any ball club, to be honest with you. Like, very good approach, doesn't whiff, doesn't chase. There's not going to be a ton of power, but it's a reliable guy to have up there. And having Josh Hogue behind him, Braden Frosman had a 5-for-5 game on Thursday against Aiden Knack with 2 home runs. So they've really found their step at the right time. And now they're 15-6 in ACC play. They're the number 1 seed in the ACC right now. They're on the verge of securing another hosting bid. Just really impressive stuff for a team that, after week 2 of the season, we were wondering, is there a turnaround? Is there anything really there to suffice for this team this year? Because very young, very inexperienced, did not have the leadership they had last year with Makarevich and Pennington. So it's very encouraging for Wolfpack fans, and it's definitely a sign of good things, especially after having Will Wade join as the basketball coach. It's been a good month or so for Wolfpack fans, I think.
Yeah, I was gonna say too, like they didn't just beat Clemson. They kind of handled them. I mean, they 10-run ruled them in Thursday night's game, and then won 8-3 in the second game, 4-1. Like, Clemson didn't even seem like they had a chance during the entire series.
Yeah, it was something like 26-7 outscore or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's so I'm gonna reference the 2021 season again. Apology, Tyler. I think one thing that NC State found when they had that season is they had 5 pitchers. They had 3 starters who would get them 6 innings, and then they had 2 bullpen arms that they just chunked up there all the time. It was those 5 guys, and that's it. They pitched 6 guys in 3 games this weekend. It's almost like once you find the Avent circle of trust, then they're like, okay, like, you're in the circle. Let's move forward. You guys are going to be our 5 to 6 pitchers, and we're just going to go. I remember that, and I referenced that Arkansas 21-2 game. Yeah, they got to one of the 5 pitchers, but then when they brought in the backup, I was like, okay, they've thrown up the white flag because they
Mhm.
recognize that this game's over, but they don't need 2 games. They can lose 1. That's
Yeah.
fine. So I think they've found kind of that circle of trust in pitching, and then they're getting bats like Sosa had a phenomenal weekend. So I mean, I think they've kind of found that formula again of like, these are our guys, we're going with our guys. These are our 6 pitchers. And frankly, I think that's why the midweek they lost to UNC Wilmington. It's because wasn't their circle of trust pitchers, and so it's one of those things. Honestly, it's why we don't really review the midweek as heavily,
Mm-hmm.
because you have some coaches like Tennessee who will throw 9 pitchers on a midweek game. They'll throw like, this guy will throw literally a third of an inning, another one will throw an inning, and it's just kind of like this. Hey, I'm going to put you in a situation. I'm going to ask you to get a job done. And when you look at it and you're like box score surfing on a Tuesday, you're like, oh, this looks weird. Well, it looks weird because it's a midweek game and they're trying to like get their guys ready to go for the weekend. Baseball is a weird sport for college, and I think it's seen pretty evidently with NC State, because it's like they find their formula on the weekends and they're like,
Mm-hmm.
we're not going to mess with that formula anymore. We're going to succeed. And it feels like this happens every year or every other year with NC State, and they really start cooking about right now.
Yeah, and speaking of one of those arms too, like Anderson Nance is a true freshman out here in the past 3 outings rather. I think it's like 14 innings. He struck out 19 guys, hasn't walked a guy, no earned runs against, has only allowed 5 hits in a 14 inning stretch.
Yeah,
pretty good.
It's pretty mind boggling for a guy that, as a high schooler, we weren't really talking about in draft circles whatsoever. And now he's now throwing into the mid 90s with a really good breaking ball and changeup, and is essentially just mowing these guys down in ACC play.
You literally just regurgitated 2021. Your Sunday starter, the righty. I'm trying to remember. He was a true freshman. He didn't have the velo, but he threw a changeup on the corner, and Arkansas couldn't touch it, and it was so frustrating because it was like, okay, it's going to be fastball away, slide, and then changeup. I'm trying to remember his name, but he was a true freshman. Because I remember Game 3, I was like, oh, it's a righty true freshman. Like, Arkansas does well versus righties. This will be great. And then I think he gave up like 1 run the entire game. I couldn't remember it. It was almost verbatim. So get excited for this year, Tyler.
Trying to think. I think it was Matt Willardson. I could be mistaken on that.
Yes. I know he was your Sunday starter. I know, because I still feel the pain from that Game 3.
I will always remember that. No offense. The hanging breaking ball from Kevin Kopps to Jose Torres.
Oh, yeah. Well, it was so interesting. I remember I was talking to a buddy. He was like, how long do you think Kopps is going to go? I was like, oh, he's like throwing 30 pitches. But I was like, he played against Ole Miss, and I want to say he threw like 130 pitches over 3 games versus Ole Miss. I was like, they recognize like this is the season on the line. Like, I bet they'd like have him go 8 innings if he can. He pitched well. What was that? It was like 2-1, 3-1. I don't remember what the final score was, but you're right. Torres hit that bomb in the 9th, and it was the 10th. It was either the 9th or the 10th, because I think Arkansas just tied the game, and everyone was like, "Okay, it's over now," because Kopps isn't going to allow a run, and then Arkansas is going to score, and then they'll go. Yeah. So sorry, reminiscing, but this feels very similar.
Yeah, and I think it was 3-2. Final, and it was the 9th inning and Torres hit that bomb, because I remember I was in my room watching it and like nervous wreck the whole time, admittedly. But I definitely don't want to keep like rubbing my toes in your face here by saying that.
Oh, no. Trust me, it's all good. We as Arkansas fans are very adept to failure. So anytime we can reminisce about our failures, it's just, status quo.
Well, do you want to reminisce about it now and talk about
Yeah,
Florida?
no, phenomenal segue.
Talking about Florida, taking the
Yeah.
series from Arkansas. So the Gators are not dead. We thought they were dead at the beginning of the year, and now they're starting to win baseball games because Florida Gators seem to do every year. We count them out, and then all of a sudden they just get hot at the end of the season. Are you concerned about Arkansas here?
Oh yeah. One, I don't know if you've seen, they just released their schedule of the pitchers for today that they'll be playing, and Vital Cheese is not listed. So he only pitched 2 innings versus Florida. He only gave up a run. So it's always hard to question a coach, but when your starting pitcher is taken out in a 5-1 game when he's given up 1 run, and he was actually asked about it after the game. He said, well, he wasn't striking people out. It's like, we really hadn't been striking out Florida pitchers that much. Wiggins, probably, if you were to say, hey, who is the top arm on Arkansas in terms of stuff? He had what looks to be a UCL injury. Dave said in the post-game press conference, it's the bad part. So he referenced it, but he didn't specifically say it. He came out in a release earlier this week and basically said the first MRI looked good. So they are going to do a second one. I mean, they've had examples of pitchers kind of going down with what appears to be elbow and coming, like Brady Tigert. It was either last year or the previous year, I can't remember.
Yeah.
But he was off for a month. A month from now is basically like the SEC championships. Like, are you going to bring him back in the postseason, a true freshman, when he's a second-year guy? I doubt it.
Yeah.
So my assumption is Wiggins is done for the year. That's just a guess. I'm not going to say like that's just a guess. And so I'm loving what I'm seeing from Fouch, from Gibbler. I mean, there's some positives, but overall, there's a lot of negatives. Also, when Souza went down, the second baseman, so he tore up I think it was a shoulder in the Vandy series. He was trying to go from second to third on a ground ball to third base, and he collided. No, Georgia. It was Georgia. Apologies. He collided, and I think he separated his shoulder, did something with his shoulder. He's out for the year. And after that, it's kind of been this, what do we do with our next left-handed bat? So they've been putting Frazier in there. They've even tried Kojal at second base. They've tried to bring Pepe back a little bit. Also, Maxwell has been dealing with a hammy. And so he was taken out on the Saturday game, I think like inning 2 or 3. So there was a really weird sequence where Arkansas actually had an error where they threw the ball to first base and then the runner scored. It was a 3-base pickoff error. You don't see those too frequently. And so there was this kind of thing like, oh, was Maxwell like dogging it in right field? And no, his hammy. And so he didn't play Saturday or Sunday. And so now you've kind of got 2 left-handed bats that you're trying to figure out. They've been throwing Diggs in there to see if they can resuscitate him. It's not happening. I mean, really, right
nice
now,
word to use there.
yeah, right now, they call themselves the Caboose Gang, the 7 through 9 hitters. The Caboose Gang is currently like derailed at the moment. And unfortunately, like the bottom of the lineup just hasn't really been phenomenal. And I mean, so if they're not getting the same production, if they're not even getting into the second or third inning with their Sunday starter, now that they're even down another arm, it's starting to look a little troubling. Now, I will say, like, I'm not saying, sell. Clearly not. I mean, they have Vahiva Aloy, in my opinion, is vastly underrated. As crazy as that is to sound, I think he's the best player in college baseball. I mean, people don't recognize he hits balls all the time over 110, and then they don't realize how good of a defensive shortstop he is. He had another phenomenal play versus Texas A&M. He's had multiple jump throw in this year. He's had just some crazy plays, and that's been in the field. And on top of that, like, a guy's got like 1100 OPS with 16 bombs, something like that. So I think they have the pieces, but right now it feels like when one piece is working, 2 aren't.
Yeah.
Whereas earlier in the year, at least 2 of the 3 were working at the same time. I'm talking too much about Arkansas when there's a lot to be talked about with Florida, but those are just the thoughts on that. Tyler, thoughts on Florida?
Liam Peterson.
Liam Peterson, Jake Clement is decided to become the next coming of what's the Red Sox third round pick last year? What was his name?
I'm blanking.
What college?
Well,
that would help me.
He came from Florida.
Oh,
he was like their back end reliever that had a really good fastball. I can't remember his name right now.
I'm blanking. I know he threw 97 pitches over 5 2/3. I remember when he came out in like the
Brandon
sixth.
Neely.
Yes, it was Neely. That's who it is.
McNeely's still pitching. He's their other bullpen arm. So it's Neely? Okay.
Yeah,
so they have a
Brandon
McNeely and a Neely.
Nice.
He threw 97 pitches in 5 2/3. I remember when he came out in the sixth, I was like, whoa, like that they may be in trouble if like things don't go well, and things went well. So, it was, I mean, the Kahito Aloy, he got robbed of a 3-run home run. It was literally like it was a leaping catch that pulled it out of the bullpen, and so it could have spiraled. But I remember when he came out in the sixth, I was like, Florida may be out of arms if it doesn't work out. And he just kept going and going and going. Yeah, 100 pitches out of the bullpen, which is pretty rare to see in college baseball.
Yeah. So for Florida, also, we got Liam Peterson. You talked about Jack Clement. What about Brendan Lawson? This is a kid I saw in the MLB Draft League. Was playing shortstop, has just shifted over to first base now for Florida, and is absolutely mashing this year. What do you got on him, Tyler?
I think I when I wrote his report last year, I had mentioned it's kind of a similar like swing and load to what Nolan Shanuel was. Because he's got the high hands, kind of like the big open, front side. I would argue Brendan Lawson's not a lot better than Shanuel, because Shanuel did hit a lot of home runs his draft eligible year. But I think in terms of pure power output and like exit velocities, I think Lawson's got to step up on him. I know there's a bit of some issues with strikeouts. Like I think it's like 36 strikeouts on the year, but he also does take his walks. He's hitting 331 on the year. It's a really impressive freshman package. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think he's eligible until 2027.
No, I don't think so.
I could be mistaken on that, but he was like one of the, if not the best Canadian guys last year in the class. So there's pedigree. He's showing it off in SEC play, and it, quite honestly, he's lining himself pretty nicely if he continues doing this for the next couple of years and enters that 2027 season, in consideration for the first 2 rounds.
Yeah.
It was a United Nations series. You had 2 Canadians, Davelins from Canada. You had Iredale. He's from Australia. I think Florida also pitched an Australian. No. I'm sorry. That was another midweek game. That was against another team. But and then you've got the Aloy brothers are from Hawaii.
Yeah.
But clearly America. But still, it was quite a. The globe was well touched in that game.
Yeah, I love it. Should we kind of go through the last couple of ACC series here that are probably I feel like the ACC just changed it. We kick NC State out of the top 25, then they go and sweep Clemson. Like we bump Louisville down in the rankings, they go and beat Florida State. We put Georgia Tech up in the rankings, and then they go and lose a series to Virginia. So like, should we just stop ranking the ACC teams at this point?
I don't know if you could do that physically.
No, I know.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Louisville a little bit. They go and stun Florida State. It looked like Florida State was going to run away with this thing. Like Jamie Arnold's shoved on Friday or Thursday or Friday night. I can't remember now with the new schedules who goes Thursday and Friday anymore. But he absolutely shoved 11 strikeouts, I think, in that game. Dominated Georgia Tech. Like Florida State overall dominated Georgia Tech in that game. It just seemed like they were going to take the series, but they bounced, or sorry, I said Georgia Tech, it's Louisville. They bounced back. Louisville bounced back and wound up taking the next 2, Saturday and Sunday. What are your thoughts on this Louisville team, Tyler?
Highly underrated,
Yeah.
personally. If I remember correctly, Patrick Forbes has not thrown since the NC State series.
No.
Because I remember he walked 7, didn't strike out a guy against NC State, and I don't know if it's like an injury related thing. I haven't heard or seen anything, but also his mechanics were just completely out of whack. So I think they're probably just giving him some rest right now. But you look at what they have in the lineup right now. Lucas Moore has turned into a revelation for them as of right now in center field. He's hitting like 380, and the power is kind of upticking a little bit. He's really turned into one of the premier center fielders in the conference, if not the country. You look at Zion Rose, Eddie King's really put himself into like a nice little senior season right now. And then you also look at another guy like Jake Monroe. Jake Monroe came from a JUCO. He's like 6'5", 230, and you would expect that kind of frame to be a big power guy, not much of a hit tool. He's the complete opposite. He has a really polished bat, really good hit tool. The power is kind of ticking up right now, and he's played a reliable third base. So there's sneaky good bats in this lineup, and that's not even to mention like Zion Rose being the man that he is. So I really do like the offense that Louisville has. I just wish the pitching would kind of figure itself out a little bit, personally, because I know they kind of struggled a little bit against Clemson the week prior. They had lost like 2 really close games and then won the Sunday set in 12, I do believe. Then get whitewashed by Kentucky. Can't do anything against Jamie Arnold, who arguably had the best start of the season so far. But then they just completely handle a pretty talented Florida State lineup. Like Alex Lodis is still hitting above 400 right now. Gage Harrelson is doing a good job at the top of that lineup. Max Williams is doing good as well. And it's really, in my opinion, that Florida State lineup's one of the best in the country. So, props to Louisville for handling what we had them top 4, top 5, I think.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and it's like you talked about the pitching. Like they lose Parker Detmers earlier in the year to an injury. Then now Patrick Forbes, like you said, hasn't pitched. Like that's 2 of your key guys in the rotation right there. That was your Friday, Saturday guy. And now you're asking all these other guys to kind of step up and fill the role, and they got a team ERA 5.47. So it's not easy to just all of a sudden find 2 starters, but they wound up pulling it off against Florida State.
A little bit of a red flag for Florida State is kind of what they were hanging their hat on at the beginning of the year was they had pretty much, without argument from anyone, the best rotation in baseball for easily the first 2 months. I mean, I think they had 3 of the top 15 arms that we had ranked. But you look at their Saturday or Sunday or Friday or Saturday, I can't remember which date they went on. Mendez went for I think he went for 5 innings, but I think he walked 6 guys in 5 innings. And then you had Valini, who, Joey, who I think he was, it felt like getting 9+ strikeouts every single game. He got 4 in 5 innings.
Yeah.
And I think the 2 of them combined gave up 9 earned in 10 innings, 9 innings, something like that. So kind of what they were putting their hat on is like, hey, we've got this phenomenal Friday through Sunday set. It's like, is this an aberration? Like, is it, maybe more of teams catching on to what these guys like to throw? Was this just Louisville getting hot? I don't know. Just something that I saw that kind of jumped out when I was reviewing the box scores for this one and kind of looking over the highlights is these are 2 guys that at the beginning of the year, I mean, we were doing a top 10 for pitchers. It felt like both of those guys were showing up every other week. So it was really surprising to see not just one of them have an off weekend, but both of them.
Yeah. Last ACC series I want to get into, Georgia Tech versus Virginia. I think we talked a little bit on the last podcast because Virginia lost basically the series against Florida State, right, to weather or most of it.
It wasn't weather, unfortunately.
I don't remember what it was.
The school shooting.
Oh, yeah. So that's unfortunate there. Virginia loses that series. Then they go and take this series from Georgia Tech. What are our thoughts here kind of on the Virginia team? Like, is there an opportunity for them to make the playoffs if they don't win the ACC championship? Or do they have a path in? It seems like they don't, but I'm not sure what your guys' thoughts are on that.
Tyler, I'll let you start because I have a simple thought, but I want to hear your more detailed thought.
I don't know about detailed, but I'll give it a shot here. I think the best way to describe Virginia's playoff chances at the moment is they're crunching for time. You had mentioned losing that series to Florida State, which again, tragic, really tragic circumstances. But in a case where like losing that series doesn't matter, but looking at what they have upcoming, I think Virginia, as of right now, is the 9 seed going into ACC tournament play, which they would get that first 9 a.m. game on the Tuesday, I do believe. I've looked at the schedule so many times, I still can't even figure out what day is what, to be honest. But I think after this weekend, they don't have really much of anybody this weekend because obviously finals, but they get Miami next weekend, which Miami is really hot right now. They have a chance of really solidifying the spot as like a 2 seed moving forward. And then they go to Blacksburg to face it's a talented Virginia Tech team that's just rattled by injuries right now for the Commonwealth Clash. So they have a chance to make noise and to kind of solidify their spot to avoid being the last 4 in heading into ACC tournament. And if they find a way to win at least 1, maybe even 2 games, I think they're fully set on being a 3 seed in, say, like Texas or something, just to throw like a dart at the wall there. But I do think the next 2 ACC series that they have is a big opportunity for them to really make pathways with the committee and find their way into the playoffs.
Yeah. Jason, what's your simple thought?
My simple thought is I don't think they're in. I think their non-con was pretty bad.
Yeah.
Unless I think they'll probably need to win like 5 more ACC games. Would probably get 5. What is the number on like it's in my head. But honestly, it really depends on. I have no idea how the committee is going to look at super conferences this year, because you just don't have teams playing every team in that conference. So even like one schedule isn't going to look the same as someone else's. So I'll be really intrigued to see with that. It's good to see Virginia's bats back. Georgia Tech, you need to be worried. I think the first 2 games, every single starter for Virginia had a hit. They had like 30 plus hits that series. There wasn't much pitching from the Georgia Tech side. So I think Georgia Tech should still feel good. They're 15-9. I think they're very clearly in there. There's not really any sort of concern on that front. But I think Virginia still needs to make more noise. That's my thought. I would say right now they're not in.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. We got 3 more series to get into. We have the 2 rivalry series, Texas and Texas A&M, Oregon State. I want to kind of get into those last. I feel like I want to talk about LSU versus Tennessee first. I feel like this series got completely overlooked because of the Texas A&M. No one was even talking about it.
Because no one was awake.
Yeah,
no one was awake.
They had the rain delays, and it was like a 10 p.m. game.
Yeah. It was 1 a.m. It was 3-0 Tennessee. I don't know if I was a moron and I stayed up and watched it because phenomenal game. I felt awful for Tennessee. You replay that game 999 times out of 1,000, they win. They booted the first ground ball to third at the beginning, or third, or I can't remember. They booted it, and then I think got a strikeout, and then they booted like a tailor-made double play. I mean, they gave them 6 outs that inning, and then Bear Jones. That ball, I don't know if they tracked it. It went over the batter's eye, and the batter's eye there it's not a small batter's eye, And it's also not a small field. I think it's like 405 or 410 to center. It's one of the bigger fields, which is it always goes back to the Tennessee plays at the bounce house, because Tennessee only had one home run that weekend, and everyone was pointing to the number like, oh, like see it is the stadium, but that's neither here nor there. But I think the oddity is, if you look at that, if you were to take all 27, 28 innings, however many, because I think one went into it ended in the ninth. If you were to jumble those innings like in a bag and like pull them out one at a time, you would say, I bet Tennessee won that weekend 2-1. And they didn't. And so it's hard to say, oh, Tennessee, you've lost 3 of the last 4 series, like you're in a spiral, like what's wrong? I think this was just one of the things where the fielders had the yips on Friday night, Saturday morning, and then they played a good team who got hot on game 3.
Yeah. I will say I was watching that. I think it was a D1 baseball interview with Bear Jones, and they interviewed him because the umpire was like telling him to run after he hit the home run, and he's like yelled back at the umpire. He's like, "The game's over, man! Like, what are you gonna throw me out?" At this point,
destroyed, like those are one of those majestic shots. It's like, you watch it, like just let the kids be kids. Like, what are you gonna do? Throw them out? Like the game's over, man. Like just relax. Like,
just walk off.
Go hit the showers. Your job is over. Like, you don't have it now. I will say that series was chippy. Antigua was looking to fight like everybody on LSU. Like he got hit, I think, like 2 or 3 times, and he was staring down, like him and Bear Jones. And Bear Jones is a massive human being. Antigua is not a massive human being. And they were staring at each other and getting into it on the first base. And there were the memes and gifs all over Twitter, X, whatever you call it. And people were just having so much fun trying to like show what he would be up against Bear Jones. But that was
Ariel Antigua's like 5'8".
Chippy. Yeah, he's not a big guy. He's not a big guy. But there were some great performances. Curiel was ridiculous. I know we talked about Strauss Snyder being the clear national player of the year for freshmen. Maybe I jumped the gun a little too much on that, but I still think he's there, teeth or not. And then, they had Phillips, their Tennessee Saturday night pitcher. I don't know, it was Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. He was dominant. He was absolutely dominant. So I think both teams LSU Sunday starter, true freshman, Kason Evans.
Mm-hmm.
So they've been looking for a third starter. 0 walks. 0 walks. You want to know how to win in college baseball? Don't walk people. Don't walk people. And that's what they've struggled with. And they finally found a guy who will get them 6 innings and not walk anyone. And not like that's against a top 5 offense. So if they can get that, and then they rounded it off with, I think, Cowan finished in afterwards, that's going to be really hard to beat if that's their Sunday. So I think LSU is coming out of this saying, okay, do we have a pitcher set? Like, do we feel good? Because if we do, and we the bats perform like the bats that they are, LSU is going to look like the team that everyone thought they were, and they are. They're still number 2 entering the season.
Yeah, do we think that Tennessee was a little bit overrated with the easy non-conference schedule? No,
I'm going to say no. Tyler?
Yeah, I still think they're super talented.
Yeah, I think they're greater than 95th percentile in like every single metric that we look at, hitting and pitching.
Yeah.
I mean, again, we talked about Tennessee's midweek. They pitched like 8 guys on the Sunday versus LSU. Now, again, like they were getting their ass kicked. So maybe like that's why they pitched 8 guys. But still, like that's just kind of who Tennessee is. Like, they're going to say, we know we're probably going to be hosting at least a regional. Let's throw these guys into the fire, see what we got. And they usually do better at the back end because they have more, guys ready to go. There are 2 different like schools of thought. There's the Avents out there who say like, my circle of trust, I want my 5 guys. And then you've got the Vitellos who are just like, hey, you threw a third of an inning. That's great. Now I'm going to bring in this other guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Tyler, you have any thoughts on this series before we go into rivalry weekend?
So I did find the metrics on that Bear Jones bomb.
Nice.
111, 452.
I heard it was into the wind too.
I believe
That's what
so,
the
yeah.
LSU announcers were saying. They said that it was the farthest ball they'd ever seen hit at the stadium.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and like Bear Jones too, from like a draft perspective, this is a guy that could have gotten significant money last year, came back to college, and the hit tools turned the corner. It's still 70 grade raw power, and the defense is a non-factor. He's going to be a first baseman at the next level. He's like what 6'4", 250.
He's a massive human being.
Yeah,
Big
like
dude.
And mind you, I'm going to put this into perspective. I'm 6'3", 215. Everybody tells me I'm huge. I would feel very small next to Bear Jones. And that's not something I'm used to doing. So it's really I think Bear Jones might be a top 100 pick this year. I really do think so. Like, we talk about these guys that they gamble coming back to school, and there's guys that it does work, so sometimes it doesn't. Bear Jones is a prime example of this is working, and everything is turned a corner. Colby Shelton's another example. I forgot to bring him up during the Florida segment. He's another guy that has turned that corner.
He got injured in 3, just a heads up. I don't know if y'all saw that.
Really?
He didn't play game 3. He had like a wrist injury or something. So that's something to keep in mind, just as a heads up.
Interesting.
Okay. Had no idea. But yeah, that's like Bear Jones has definitely turned himself into a legitimate payday and is a top 100 pick this year. Mark my words.
He's got 5 stolen bases on the season too, so that's why. He's got speed. Just kidding.
I don't know what position he's going to play, but I think the pros have pretty much shown you, like, if you've got the hit tool, they'll find a spot for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last 2 series you didn't want to get into. I want to save Oregon and Oregon State last because Jason apparently has lots of thoughts for that. So we're gonna go to Texas A&M right now. This was actually, all the games were close. Every single game was close. The one thing I think that impressed me about this Texas team is that they just find ways to win baseball games. Like, they are very, very well coached. That's the other thing I came away from watching this series, is like, they don't make a lot of mistakes. They kind of know exactly what they need to be doing on every single play that's happening on the field, and they execute. And I think that was really what was most impressive for me for this Texas A&M series. I will give props to Texas A&M because they were in every single game. They had a shot to win every single game. So the talent is there. Texas just outplayed them, in my opinion.
Yeah. 3 thoughts. 1, maybe the best play of the year defensively. Sorrell, I think, for right fielder for A&M. People always talk about like a Superman catch. This was a legitimate running, sprinting, completely parallel with the ground catch. Yeah. So if you haven't watched it, Google it, look at it, because it's probably the best defensive play of the year. Second, Jared, just to combine with what you said, this is one of those games that, same theory, you bundle up all the innings, you pull them out one by one. You have no idea who won it, but Texas won all of them. They swept it. So I don't think if you're A&M, you're coming out of that saying like, oh, maybe we have fool's gold. I think actually you're kind of saying the opposite. We just played the hottest team in the country, and basically, like, it was a stalemate. Yeah, we lost an inning here, an inning there, but every other inning was effectively a stalemate. And lastly, unfortunately for Texas, with Jared Spencer. I don't know what that's going to look like. They're also TBD for Sunday for Arkansas, so they just moved up. Ruger's been phenomenal for them. So clearly that's now their guy that they're going to go with. But for a team that's kind of hung their hat on pitching, and they've had to just because of some injuries, what happens now that their ace is out?
Yeah, and Tyler, that's what I was going to ask you to kind of dive into, is Ruger. Because they lost Jared Spencer, he was another big draft guy for us on the board as well. But Ruger Riojas has really, to me, kind of broken out. And I know you talked about it, even in the preseason, he was a guy you're going to be watching all year.
Yeah, Ruger's really turned in one hell of a year. And like, he started the year as like a late inning stalwart out of the bullpen. I think he pitched like 3 shutout innings against Louisville to start the year when we were there. And obviously they lost the game, but that wasn't Ruger's fault. But now he's kind of being asked to be the new Friday guy. and what was he pitched 5 2/3 innings against A&M and got the win. I think for Texas, like moving forward, do you throw Volantis into the rotation now? Because he's been very valuable as the late inning guy now that Ruger's been pushed into a different role. But now you're kind of wondering, with Spencer going down, he's not going to be pitching the rest of the year. It's a shoulder injury. Cade Bing hasn't quite been the person that you want in that Sunday spot. Luke Harrison has been fine as your Saturday guy.
Yeah.
But I know they loved Volantis coming into the season, and they've given Jason Flores chances. I really do think that Volantis is going to be given this Sunday spot sooner rather than later. And I think he's a guy that's like true freshman, sinker, slider, curveball guy that nobody has been able to touch virtually all year. And it's been really impressive to watch a true freshman just come in as lanky as he is and is now adding more velocity from his senior spring last year and is arguably one of the best relievers in the entire SEC. It's been really impressive to watch as an outsider.
I think I heard on the broadcast that he played water polo as well in high school or something swimming related. And he was like, I didn't want to like ruin my shoulders as much anymore and decided to play baseball. And I was like, that seems kind of counterintuitive there.
Yeah.
That doesn't, I was about to say, that doesn't seem right for a guy that would swim. I'm trying to think. Let's see. I'm going to look this up now.
Yeah, I don't know. It was something they said on the broadcast. They're like, he was in some kind of water sport, and it was like, yeah, I'm good. I want to play baseball and not ruin my shoulders.
Random betting aside, Arkansas is minus 180 on Thursday for their game versus Texas, which to me was a big surprise because of how well Ruger's been pitching. Root struggled versus Florida. He struggled, I think, versus Vanderbilt as well. He struggled at Ole Miss. So he's kind of been hot and cold. Arkansas's offense has been a little cold. So just as an aside, kind of an oddity to see Arkansas not only favored, but pretty heavily favored for Thursday's first game.
I just looked at his Twitter bio. It does say WHS water polo in his bio. So
look at that.
Yeah. So water polo, and he surfed.
Oh.
He was a surfer.
That's one of those things when you watch it in the Olympics and they always show like the underwater view and they're just like kicking all over the place, like punching each other. I'm like, that looks horrible.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't want to do that. Like to tread water for that long. I don't have the stamina. That would be terrible.
My wife played college water polo and has like all her hips are shot.
Oh my gosh.
Treading water.
Yeah.
I would probably drown playing water polo, to be honest.
Oh yeah. And they're brutal. Like that is not a friendly sport.
No, you throwing elbows and everything, and you're trying to get away with it.
Kick somebody in the groin, and never getting back up out of that. Nope.
Yeah. Just see someone like sink. Do you just keep going? Like
start floating with the head down.
Just in case people want to know, we're gonna second as a water polo podcast coming.
Yeah.
We all know about it, so we're really gonna dive into that here on the. We want to wrap up with the Oregon and Oregon State series. Absolute domination by the Oregon Ducks. They hosted Oregon State for a 3-game set, swept them, headed over to Corvallis on Tuesday, took game 4 there. They just absolutely dominated them. Like Mason Neville went off, just launching nukes. Jacob Walsh launching nukes. Grayson Grenzel, I think, threw a complete game. Again?
No, I think he threw like 7 or 8 innings, something like that.
He went
complete
game the weekend before.
Game. It was well into the game.
Yeah, just absolute dominant performance. This Oregon team's got to be a hosting team at this point. I think they're the favorites to win the Big Ten. Yeah. I don't know.
We'll
Jason,
see.
You look like you're about to jump out of your seat over there. So
let me give a disclaimer. These are all of my thoughts, and they don't pertain anywhere whatsoever. Blah, 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 blah. RPI is broken. RPI is the dumbest stat of all time in college baseball, and it needs to be thrown away in the trash can, burned, and not put out until the embers are completely gone. Hey, I will say when Oregon State put together their schedule, they were brilliant. They saw we don't have a conference, we don't have a lot of key matchups. We're going to go on the road. They've played 15 games at home. That's it. I was doing a quick search. I only found like 2 or 3 schools that were even in the same realm, and most of those were like northeastern schools that it's 2 feet of snow in a March, and they're having to go anywhere they can to try to play
Yeah.
some games. So there is, for those who don't know, a moronic rule in RPI that games away from home get a 30% increase in your value. And so Oregon State effectively said, okay, well, we'll just go away from home a lot. And they've played well away from home. But they've played effectively for what we'll call them true weekend series, and they've gone 2-2 against those legit teams. They lost to Nebraska. They got swept by Oregon. They got swept by Oregon. Then they played Cal Poly and UC Irvine. Like those are their 4. And so it's like, okay, well, they beat Cal Poly and UC Irvine. Like, are they good? Okay, well, who did UC Irvine beat? Okay, well, they played Oregon and Cal Poly. Oh, okay. Well, is Cal Poly good? Well, who Cal Poly? Oh, they played Oregon State and UC Irvine. And so it's almost like this circuitous kind of thought process. Well, they're good because they played them, and they're good because they played them. You look at beyond just what those teams' records are against one another. They are 19-21. Those 3 teams in Q1, Q2 games. Oregon State is 11-10 in Q1, Q2 games. Those are RPI adjustments.
Yeah.
And so the thought is like, how in the world is Oregon State 14th in the RPI, and Oregon, who we just talked about should be for sure hosting, is like 29th in the RPI because of the stupidity of the RPI. And I hope that the committee looks at this and says, we need to burn this to the ground, because this is nothing against Oregon State. They did this masterfully. They looked at the equation, they figured it out, and they found a way to where, even though they only had 4 to 5 like marquee weekends, and really we're only like 500 in those marquee, they are set up to host, which frankly doesn't make sense. But then you look at like some of the subjective rankings, and they were up to number 3 last week in some of the and that, like, how? I just didn't understand it. Like, yes, I get they won X amount of games in a row, but it's like, if the competition isn't there, like, how do you then look at a team like Tennessee and say like, oh, you've lost 3 of the last 4, therefore you're not good? It's like you can't make these transitive property decisions of, oh, well, this team lost to that team, therefore that team's good, or this. It's just, are they good? Have they played well? How did they do against teams that are good? And the answer for the last one has been 50-50. And so if are you really going to reward a school that's been 50-50 against like their marquee matchups with a national seed? Because right now they're right there on the bubble for that. And one of the outlets put Oregon, I think, in the Oregon State regional, which blows my mind. Like, how in the world could you sit there and say this team went 4-0 to them, and you want to send them to that regional to play them again? Like,
Oregon would be
how in the
pissed.
world are you going to beat a team 7 times in a season?
Yeah.
And like, I'm off my soapbox for a second. Tyler, take it.
I don't know how to match that, to be honest.
Jason, don't worry, we won't clip the RPI rant either.
Okay.
This is like, I'm going to bring up an example of what this feels like for me right now. I have witnessed somebody make a hole-in-one at Tobacco Road Golf Course, which, if you don't know where that is or what course that is, it's one of the premier golf courses on the East Coast. I had to be the next person in line to take a shot after a hole-in-one on hole 3, and I'm sitting here, it's like, what the fuck do I do? This is what it feels like for me right now, because I was so lost in everything that Jason had said. It was spot on. Like, Oregon State has made this perfect schedule looking at the equations going forward, and just went 0-4 against a team that is now projected to be the 2 seed in their regional.
Yeah.
To me, it just doesn't add up. And that's not any shot at what Oregon State has done. They've been put into the situation where they are kind of forced to do this.
Yeah.
But just after watching this weekend, I can't force myself to be like, oh, Oregon State can still realistically host, but putting Oregon as the 2 seed in that regional is ludicrous, in my opinion. And I really do think Oregon should be in the hosting conversations, and I feel like they really made a big statement this past week, going 4-0 against this kind of Oregon State squad. Like, Cole Stokes has found his gear now. He's not walking a ton of guys.
Mm-hmm.
Max Maloney, I think, had a couple really good defensive plays against Oregon State this past weekend, and also homered on either Saturday or Sunday, one of the two. And he's looking like one of the premier bats in next year's class. So I really do think that Oregon has set themselves up very, very well to host this year. And I also kind of do wonder, since they do share that park with the Eugene Emeralds, maybe they might not be hosting because of that fact that if Eugene's playing at home that week, what can they physically do?
Yeah. Kick him out. I'm just kidding.
I mean, I wouldn't be against that. Actually, let me double check to see if they would.
But I was just going to add on too. It's like, you look at the rest of Oregon State's schedule, it's like a cakewalk basically. And if
Hawaii and Iowa, right?
Hawaii, Iowa on the road, and then Long Beach State at home.
Iowa is harder than it looks. Iowa's one of those. I think they're 20-4 in the Big Ten.
Yeah, that pitching staff's been good.
It's crazy. Hawaii, I think, is like top 50 in the RPI. So both of those series are technically Q1s for, again, whoever made Oregon State's schedule. Like,
great job.
Like, take a lap. Like, you destroyed it. Like, way to go. You foresaw the season, and you said, if we play this, doesn't even matter if like we're like crazy above expectations, we're gonna be doing well. Yeah. And I again, nothing against Oregon State. In fact, actually, kudos to Oregon State. If you find a way to give yourself an advantage, why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah, it makes all the sense. Tyler, what we got on Eugene?
So they will be away from Eugene that week of regional play, but they will be at home, say, if Oregon happens to host a super regional. Gotcha. That might be a conflict of interest once we get to that point. But as of right now, Eugene Emeralds will be going to play Tri-City, which I think is the Angels affiliate, the weekend of May 30th through June 2nd, which would be regional play.
Got it. I think that kind of wraps it up for all the series for us. Do we have any final thoughts besides burn down the RPI, Jason?
I'm really excited where things are for the outlook of the tournament. I think everyone and their dog has been saying that NIL is going to destroy parity. It feels like parity is phenomenal right now in the game. You had Texas A&M, who everyone was like, they're the best, struggling at the beginning of the year. You had everyone saying, well, Georgia Tech's dominating, and then they struggling. Oh, you have Florida State that's on, oh, then they struggle. Oh, you've got Clemson they just got swept. Like, there's so much parity in the game right now, which honestly is really great to see. Now, I do think that parity is pretty strong at kind of like the Power 3, Power 4, whatever you want to call it, conference level. Mm-hmm. I'll be intrigued to see what that parity looks like once we get into the tournament. Do you have those 2s and 3s who are the Troys of the world? Do you have the Troy kind of living up to where they've been, kind of that 35 to 20 region kind of the whole season? Yeah. Or are they going to go to like an Alabama or an Auburn and struggle? I'm really interested to see, but I do think it makes for like a hell of a super regionals. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I do think it makes it to where the super regionals look to set up very, very lovely.
Yeah, I'm excited for supers and Omaha. I feel like it's going to be a blast. Tyler, any final thoughts for you?
Burn the RPI, down at stake. What are our thoughts on having ELO replace RPI?
You got to explain it a little bit more to me, frankly. I don't know enough of it to give it, a time of the day at the moment. But I mean, I've looked at the DSR, the Diamond Sports ranking. It's what 643 Charts puts together. I mean, they have Oregon State, I think 38, 30 something. So I mean, they're kind of in the same ballpark. But I don't know. I want something different, but I do think it has to be very transparent. Like, I don't think you can have this black box formula. That is one nice thing about the net ranking in like college basketball is you can say very clearly, do X, do Y, you get output Z. I don't think it would be good for the sport to have like, oh, we've got our hidden formula that gives output Z, because then, how do you justify a win or a loss or a number? But uh, long story short, yes, this should be the swan song of RPI, in my opinion. At least, hopefully.
I dig it. Anyways, other thoughts? It's crunch time, basically. I think that's the best way to put it. We're what 2-3 weeks out from conference tournaments point, and there's gonna be a lot of stuff for us. I know I'll be at the ACC tournament this year again, and we're gonna try and get other representation at other conference tournaments as well. So, really excited for what we have coming up on that front.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have we got some MLB mock drafts coming your way on the draft side. So Tyler's gonna have a top 300 draft board update at some point too, as well. So got plenty of content coming that way. College baseball, like Tyler said, we're gonna continue to keep trying and have all the coverage for the playoffs. I think we're gonna do a live selection show stream as well. Kind of do some like on the spot reactions to the regionals that are getting announced, any snub teams that might happen. But yeah, plenty of content. We had an interview with Alabama's Riley Quick recently. Check that out. Oregon's Mason Novell, also on the YouTube channel as well. But till next time, we'll see you.